Hey guys, welcome to Sachs Realty's live stream. It's been a while since I've actually done a live show. Those of you that have followed our channel for quite some time know that for 4 years straight, I think with very few exceptions, I think maybe 2 times I had a fellow agent sit in on a Tuesday night. I ran a Tuesday night live stream from about 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, and then it really drug. Sometimes it went on to like 11 o'clock at night. We'd have these really long podcasts, really long sessions. And I burned out of that. Honestly, Tuesdays were very long days for me. And had a lot of people say, "What happened to your live stream? We miss you." And so we are working on a couple things here, and hopefully we will have a regular live stream. Will probably be during the day. Who knows? It may be Tuesdays, just like right now. But I have a lot of people in my inbox and text messages, and people were sending me a lot of videos over the last couple of days talking about, well, our housing market right where we are in Maryland. I'm a Maryland real estate broker. If those of you don't know, we're a real estate company, not just a YouTuber like a lot of people believe. But a lot of you reached out and said, what's going on? All over the news and social media, you were hearing about how because of the result of all the federal job layoffs that the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia housing markets were in fact collapsing, and as a result that inventory was skyrocketing and price reductions were going crazy. And Joe, before I forget, make sure you're ready to show that last fall slide about the DC housing market. I do want to show people that as well, because what you're hearing isn't exactly true. So we're going to put that to bed right away. I'm going to show you, if you can follow along, we're going to have probably about an hour and a half today, maybe 2 hours, depending on how many commenters we need to address. We're going to get to the real facts sooner than later for those of you that can't hang out with us. But I do encourage you to bookmark this video, and after it publishes, to revisit it, maybe pause the slides. I don't have any way of attaching the slides that I have, numerous slides. If you're in the Maryland, Virginia, or DC area, they're going to be very interesting to you. But really, one of the things that I have been talking about over the last several of years has been the fact that we sort of peaked out in the housing market 2022. Now, there are a lot of people that disagree with that narrative. And what we're now seeing is that it's showing up in mainstream media, which it hadn't been forever. Now, whether it's coming from pockets nationwide, whether it's Florida housing market, whether it's Arizona, whether it's North Carolina, whether it's Dallas, the metro area, whether it's Houston, Texas, and now Maryland, DC, and Virginia, what is starting to show up is the fact that, well, I don't care who you like politically. This isn't a political show. But the fact of the matter is this has been coming for quite some time. When we have houses that are priced at the 3-handle or 2-handle and mortgage interest rates, for years we were looking during post 2020, we saw 30-year fixed rate mortgages for new purchases, not new homes, but just new purchases, not refinanced mortgages. But we saw them in the 2s and 3s on average for several years. That created this housing market bubble in a lot of ways, the free money that was circulating around, not just for home buyers to live in, owner-occupied owners, but also for real estate investors, because a lot of these big funds, institutional buyers, get money even cheaper than that. They get cheaper money than you, believe it or not. And also they have other people's money. So OPM, other people's money. And, well, who can't buy up a lot of houses with other people's money. But what we've experienced over since 2022, since the Fed started raising more rates, the interest rates, not mortgage rates, we really watched people that had debt, which is a lot of people, start to struggle in paying back their loans. And as we know, and this is just a little recap, there was a lot of moratoriums that were put in place, and students forgot all about their student loans, and we're hoping that they didn't have to pay those. And people racked up a lot of revolving debt, home equity lines of credit, while they were in lockdown, fixing up the house, building those schools in their basement, those classrooms, those offices, expecting never to go back to work again. And since the Fed started raising rates, we saw the credit crunch, or where people were struggling. They're like, wow, my debt is really mounting up. And if I can't pay it all off, my credit card debt, for instance, well, I'm now paying a lot more for everything I charged. And the average credit card in America today, I think, is about 25% per year. So what has happened over the last several months, 12 months, is we have seen a massive slowdown because home prices were priced in at 2 and 3 handles on mortgage rates. That's where the pricing went to. And when we started seeing mortgage rates go up and continue to tick up, and now we're looking at the mid sixes, we're way off mark for people to be able to afford, most people to be able to afford a medium priced home on a median income. Somewhere in history, it was about 3 times or 4 times max your median salary. You should be able to afford a median priced home. Well, we've watched that grow to 5x, 6x, 9x if you're in the Northeast. Maybe if you're in Boston, Massachusetts, maybe you're paying 8 or 9x a median salary for a home. Those numbers don't work. What we were hoping, or you were hoping, was that mortgage rates would go back down and that you would be able to afford those homes again. That's what sellers have been hoping for. That's one of the reasons why they haven't moved and why we saw inventory really tighten down. We hit lows on the sales side, on residential sales, that date back 30 to 40 years in numbers. So we've watched the whole industry become shattered, from real estate agents to loan officers to title companies to home inspectors, you name it, the whole gamut. Even the marketing companies that print signs are feeling the effect that they're not printing as many for sale signs and rider signs and, this is beautiful inside signs. So I just want to kind of, as we are moving along here, I do want to let you know that we are going to be publishing a link. We could pin that, Joe, in the top. I don't want you to come on here just to tell me some story. This is not what this show is about. But if you're a federal employee that has recently lost your job, or you're a government contractor that due to no more funding, you've been let go, and you want to come on and tell us what you're doing, what your expectations are, and how you're planning on handling things, we want you to come on. Also, I'm expecting, if they can make it, some big multifamily operators, Ken McElroy and Danille, his wife, yesterday. They were going to do the best that they can to make the show. So we want to bring you also a perspective on what they're seeing in apartments as a result of layoffs and what you can expect if you're renting. What will rents do? So we're hoping that very shortly, probably in about 20 minutes or so, we can bring them in. But I want to just bring up, while we were talking about mortgage rates, I do want to just show a couple things if we can here. So this chart that we're looking at was published. This is all live. And by the way, we'll publish the notes below. And a lot of this, you can find this information out yourself. But I'm just trying to bring you up to date, bring you up to speed before we dive into the housing data. Right now, we're looking at the 30-year fixed rate mortgage somewhere about 6.8% last week. There are reports of 6.5% now. Again, still way higher than this 2 and 3 handle where homes are priced at today. One more chart I want to pull up here that I'd like to show, because when we're talking about the Federal Reserve, and by the way, I have 2 great shows that are coming out this week. One as soon as we can get it published, maybe tomorrow, where I interviewed E.J. Antoni. He's with the Heritage Foundation. And before you go getting yourselves excited, because it is a conservative, association that they have where he's talking from, we're really not talking about left, right, Democrat, Republican. What we're doing is looking at the data that they provide, because we talk about Project 2025. And so that's coming out. So you do want to stay tuned for that. And then I also have another video that's coming out this week with John Rubino, who's a frequent contributor to our channel, where he's giving his opinion on what he expects with DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, and what he thinks we will see and what will be the next targets and things like that for layoffs. So 2 good shows that will be coming to sort of back this up. But when we look at this chart here, and I want you to understand the amount of market manipulation that has occurred. The unfortunate thing is the type of market manipulation that we're talking about happens to be the roof over our head. And for the first time in serving the housing market in more than 35 years, going through the great financial crisis or global financial crisis, however you want to refer to it, we've never seen housing this unaffordable. And that's both from a purchase and both from a rent. I received an email from somebody, one of my viewers yesterday. I have to tell you, it almost made me cry. And I don't cry very easily. I mean, it's, I was reading it and I read complete desperation. I don't know, one day I may read it. But these are the kinds of calls and emails and messages that I get from people that are trying to make ends meet, that are trying to buy a house, that are trying to raise a family, where we have heard nothing but the economy's booming, the housing market is never going to go down, you better buy now, the prices are never going down, if you don't buy now, it'll be too late, you're throwing your money away in rent. These are the things that we're filling people's heads with on a daily basis that is really affecting a lot of people. And we need to really get back to a point in time where we start talking about what's really going on. And I'm not just talking about from my standpoint, because I've been trying, and with a lot of swimming upstream, and a lot of people saying that what I'm talking about isn't true. But guys, if you're fortunate enough that you're not dealing with financial struggles, and you're fortunate enough that you did buy a house and you're able to pay your bills, and you can handle the explosion of maintenance costs and insurance and property tax cost, consider yourself very lucky, because it's not the norm. And we need to tell people that, because if you're one of the ones that are sitting on the sideline, you need to know that you've done nothing wrong. You don't tell somebody that they made a mistake, they screwed up, they should have bought 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Maybe they couldn't. So what we have to do is we have to start, really being responsible. Not me, but everybody, agents, loan officers, need to start being responsible and letting people know that they're not in this alone. But look at this chart. And the reason why this chart is so important that I'm bringing up here is because I want you to see what I'm talking about. And we're going to, I don't know, Joe, can we zoom in on this thing here a little bit? Or maybe we can just go to the 5-year. How's that? I don't know. It's not working on my end. There we go. All right. So what I want people to pay attention to here is when I was talking about the 3 and 2 handles, I'm referring to right here is in the middle of 2020 when we first found out about this virus. Now, maybe some people, they've told me that they thought they had it back in December and November, and these this bad cold that nobody knew what it was, respiratory infection. Once we got into 2020, everybody knew what it was. But let's look here. Look, these are 30-year average nationwide fixed rate mortgages, right? All the way to here. And that's when we started to see it pick up. From here, it jumped in March when the Fed started raising rates. The 10-year Treasury responded to that lack of confidence, and we watched the mortgage rates skyrocket. And you can see where we are right here, all the way up here, right? So when we're looking about the housing market, when we're talking about the housing market, when people are saying that home prices will only go up, they're not looking at the data. They're not paying attention to the data. They're actually being ignorant to the data. They're just saying what they have, and I'm not blaming them, because what we've done in mainstream media is we've only reported positive gains. We watch companies like Redfin, Zillow, Homes.com, Realtor.com. All these economists say the home prices are increasing year over year over year over year over year. They're ignoring this data. They're not. What we're seeing is that the information has been really skewed based on who's buying the houses now, where we're seeing the average home buyer is 59 years old in the last year, where we're seeing that the first-time home buyer is now 39 years old instead of 24 years old like it was 30 years ago, right? So we've watched this pick up. They're not looking at the data. They're not looking at the fact that the purchases are cash and that they're more expensive homes. They're not considering the data's been manipulated by the home builders. We're looking at inventory, shadow inventory that hasn't been reported to the MLS. We're looking at home builders that are giving incentive programs that aren't being reported because they are price reductions. If you spend $50,000, you own your own mortgage, Mr. Builder. You own your own separate mortgage company, and you're doing a 30-year fixed rate buy down at 5.5% in the middle of a 7% climate, it could cost that builder $50,000. Those numbers are not being reported. When you're increasing incentives to people that you didn't increase incentives to or extend these same incentives to a year ago, a year and a half ago, these aren't being reported because they don't have to. They don't have to tell you what's going on. It would be counterintuitive. It would be a self-fulfilling prophecy for even them to do it. But now we're seeing home builder stocks tumble. Let's go ahead and talk about DOGE and what's happening. All of these things that I'm talking about, the reason I'm recapping, the reason that I'm bringing them up right now is because, and I don't care whether you like Trump or not, you can't deny the fact that he won by a landslide. And that may make you angry. No one's happy with everybody and everything that they stand for. But it has been predicted, and I have said it myself on the channel, that this was building up. And this dates back. Guys. This is nothing that the Biden administration was solely responsible for. This dates back to, if you want to, be honest about it, it dates back to removing the dollar backed by the gold standard. This goes way back. This is something that Fed, chairmen have made, and the FOMC committees have been working and manipulating interest rates and trying to control the market. Maybe they were trying to do it, hopefully, to benefit the people, to utilize it in booms and busts, the changing of these interest rates. But when we do it untimely, we now know it's catastrophic as a result. And the problem is America has no reverse gear. We don't have a system that's based on we can have a recession and it be fine. We watch what happens. Banks collapse when that happens. Bailouts have to happen when that, when we have recessions. I want to talk about the DOGE for a second, because one of the things that I learned when I was talking with EJ, and we just recorded yesterday, it's a podcast that's coming out that I was talking about, right here on the White House, it's the establishing and implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency, President DOGE agenda by modernizing federal technology and software to maximize government efficiency and productivity. It goes on. There's more of these sections in here. I'll drop it if you want to read it, if you haven't read it. But here's what I was brought to my attention, that this was nothing new. Obama actually, back on June 13th, 2011, on the White House website, he had an executive order. It says, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution, laws of the United States of America, in order to cut waste, streamline government operations, and reinforce the performance and management reform gains my administration has achieved, is hereby ordered as follows. My administration is committed to ensuring that the federal government serves the American people with the utmost effectiveness and efficiency. And as if we get down here, the three words that I've been hearing President Trump use were actually documented by President Obama. It says in Section 3, Government Accountability and Transparency Board, there is hereby established a Government Accountability and Transparency Board to provide strategic direction for enhancing the transparency of federal spending and advanced efforts to detect and remediate fraud, waste, and abuse in federal programs. That may come to a surprise to you, because it did to me. Maybe we're hearing it more now. Maybe the fact that last year we learned that we weren't being told the truth on jobs numbers. Now, maybe it was just miscalculation. But we had multiple downward job revisions. They would come out with these job reports. We'd find out a couple months later that they were wrong. They didn't hit the mainstream media. But then all of a sudden, we learned that at the end of the year, or I think it was in March of, maybe it was in, no, it was at the end of the year, that they misstated in 24, 800 and I think 43,000 more jobs. And then we find out that the government was actually the major employer. So what we have to understand here is people, when they hear things in the news, most people don't dig deeper. They shouldn't have to. We should have transparency. We should know the numbers. We shouldn't have to guess. We should expect that what we're being told is the gospel, is the truth. Shouldn't we? Because why? Because you're making decisions based on it. So if we're hearing that the job market is strong, and we're hearing that job creation is being made by the hundreds of thousands, and we're hearing that the economy is running strong, and we're hearing that home prices are continuing to go up, and that we've achieved this soft landing. Matter of fact, we've achieved no landing at all. You go out and buy homes and get yourselves into debt. And then when you find out it isn't true, and we see what's happening right now, well, guess what? We go into panic mode. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics announced a preliminary downward revision of 818,000 jobs for 2024 on August 21st, 2024. BLS published the draft results in its annual benchmark exercise, which stated that employment gains were previously overstated by 818,000 through March of 2024. Now, I've always said that the only thing that has kept the housing market intact has been jobs. I've always said that. If you go back and you listen to any of my podcasts, I say, you know what, this doesn't make any sense at all. People are overspending. They're bringing $100,000 to pay a over appraisal gap addendum, which means that the house is not worth what they're offering, and they're bringing cash a lot of times from a gift from mom and dad to pay the $100,000 and more because they have to have the house. The appraisal didn't support it. And then we had companies like Zillow publishing estimates and matching these list prices of the houses instantly. And they're like, well, I got to offer this amount of money because Zillow says it's worth that much. The jobs market has been the only thing that has kept it together. And that's because as long as they can continue to make their monthly payment, everything is fine. When I had Danielle DiMartino Booth 2 years ago on my site, and she said, plan on one person in the home losing a job. You ought to at least think about that. Think about your dual income families, not like the 70s anymore. And prior to that, where one person could work, afford to raise a family, afford to pay the mortgage payment, afford to pay all the bills, including the car expenses. And they could raise a family. And I'm not saying that to be chauvinistic in any way. I'm all about women in the workforce. But not that both have to work to the point that they can't raise their own families. Now, if that's what they want, that's fine. But I don't think a lot of people want that when I talk to these young people that are having kids. They're not cool with sending their kids off to have someone else raise them, indoctrinate them in the way they think instead of the way that mom and dad thinks. But we've gotten ourselves to a point of what's the payment? What's the payment? What's the payment? The loan officers say, take the rate. You can always refinance later. Do you know why they say that, ladies and gentlemen? Because they get paid again to refinance. So if you'd only buy now, it's 7% or 6.5%. When the rates drop down to 4.5%, 5%, good luck. But they drop a half a point and you realize that you need more equity from your house and you're going to hope to get it so you can pay off credit card bills. A lot of these lenders make money again. A lot of these states make money again on transfer and recordation fees. Enslaving us to debt. It's all about the payment. Payments are fine as long as you're gainfully employed and that everybody's making money. Well, what happens here, and I think we've got the McElroys on tap, so I want to bring them in right now. So we're about to hear, and I want to bring them in because this is important data from them. Because, they are talking, these are big operators. They're big operators in the apartment industry. And shelter inflation has been through the roof, too. So I do want to bring them in. It looks like they're getting ready. Guys, give us the thumbs up when you're ready to come in. Yep, he's ready. Let's bring him in. Okay.
Hey, man.
What's happening there, Mr. McElroy, Mrs.
How you
McElroy?
doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing today?
What's up? Good. Can you see Danille?
We can see. Got a little sunlight coming through, but that's all right.
Yeah, I know. Sun's coming up over the mountain now. It's beautiful.
We're grateful that you could be with us, so we won't keep you long, but we do want to bring you in because, I know you and I have podcasted together before, and you published a video yesterday that I was kind of thinking in the back of my head. I'm being inundated by text messages and emails and calls, literally, about what's happening in the housing market. For weeks, my agents and myself have been fielding calls from people that work for the federal government that are being called back to work, and they live in different states. Arizona's one, North Carolina, Tennessee. and they're have been watching it, and they want to move back to Maryland. Maybe they may decide not to. Maybe they'll take they'll take this opportunity to change jobs, because Maryland's a lot more expensive than some of these other areas. But I saw that you both published a video about Maryland and DC. And by the way, guys, all of their information is in the show notes. They talk constantly about what's going on in the housing market. But yeah, so I want to address what you're both multifamily operators. How many units do you all own, just for some context?
Well, right now we have about 10,000 units. We bought about 300 million already this year, believe it or not. We'll close on it by the end of next month. So we're real active in the, call it 200 units and up space. But obviously single family is a huge part of what we've tracked, because people move out of houses into single family. So, even though it's not a direct competitor, we track it real close.
Are you starting to see distress in the rental market, or have you been seeing any distress?
Yeah, the rental market's been under fire for a while because of stuff that got started, 2+ years ago before rates went up. So anything that, there's a big lag with apartments. Obviously, it takes a good 14, 15 months just to open the clubhouse. And then it's another 2 years of a lease up, depending on the size. So, you're looking at a 3-year project. That's actually just when you put the shovel in the dirt. So, anything that's hitting right now started in 22, really, and probably was being planned in 21. And that seems like a long time ago, but you got to remember where interest rates were. Like, they were pretty low for construction, at least. And so what happened is people really pulled back. Obviously, when rates went up, people that owned land just pulled back completely and said, we're gonna put this on pause for a little while. Not that they got rid of the land or anything. They're just, costs went up, cost of construction went up, cost of build went up, interest rates went up, all that stuff. So what we have right now is a bunch of units hitting the market all over the place. It's sporadic, right? Denver, Dallas, Phoenix, obviously, is where we are, Salt Lake City, everywhere. And that's moving through. So that's creating softness in the rental market, which is exactly why we're buying right now, because you want to buy when there's vacancy and there's concessions and there's high marketing costs and that stuff. And there's a little bit of a disruption. And also some builders are in a little bit of trouble because they didn't anticipate the high cost of construction, the interest rates going up while they're under construction, because construction debt is a floating debt. You don't fix construction debt. It floats with the market. So it's a great time to be a buyer for multifamily, that's for sure.
And then on single family, Todd, what we're seeing is rents are going down a little bit, and those that bought before 21 are able to absorb that because they bought for a lesser cost, right? But our investors that bought in 22, 23, they're really having a hard time, and they're having to sell, and sometimes for a loss.
Are you seeing the ones that are losing? I mean, obviously, we can look back at TV programs that have been teaching people, to flip houses and to, accumulate rentals. Are you seeing a lot of the ones that are being hurt with selling at a loss? Are they new investors? Are these investors not just that bought from 2020 maybe on, but that are first time at buying investment properties?
They had really tight margins, right? Like their cash flow was really tight. Or a big thing we're seeing in the Phoenix area is the Airbnb, right? 13 grand a month on a home. Well, long term, those large homes, there's a cap to renting, right? Like you can't, if you have a 5-bedroom house and you have a 3-bedroom house, the difference in the rent's not that much, because if somebody can pay $6,000 a month, they're probably going to go buy a house, right? So these people that were making like 13 grand a month on these 5-bedroom Airbnbs that really weren't that nice, they really weren't in the nicest neighborhoods, they might only be able to rent that house for like 4 grand a month. So they have a huge deficit there, and we're seeing a lot of fire sales there. And I always tell Ken, I'm like, just look for the bunk beds. And if you see there's bunk beds, it was the Airbnb.
How dependent is, and talking about the multifamily market, the apartment business, how dependent is that business on the federal workforce?
In Phoenix, not so much. That's kind of why we, focused in on the video yesterday. Is exactly why. I think sometimes people forget if I think they're at 100,000 jobs now or something like that. I don't know where it'll head, but I do believe we're in the beginning. But if 1,000-person employer shut down in any city anywhere, it would be national news, and it affects everything. It affects shopping, it affects schools, it affects restaurants, it affects rentals, it affects sales of homes, all that. And so I think what we were just trying to make a point is that the movement of people, the disruption of people create ripple effects through the economy, period. So we're not seeing it here at all yet. But that doesn't mean it won't, because we have a ton of federal buildings, just like a lot of the cities. But I think when we looked in DC, that something like 11 or 12% of the workforce was federal. So that's why we kind of focused in there. And then we started doing the research, and we realized that listings have gone up almost 4,000 listings in a month's time. And the median home price had gone down over $100,000. And I always say, Todd, it's if you have a movement of people, migration pattern. We saw this during COVID. We're seeing this now. We're seeing specifically the California wildfire, or the fires that happened. They're pouring into Vegas and Phoenix right now. We're starting to see that. So when you see a shift of people around, no matter what circumstance is, in this particular case, it's they lost their jobs. It does put pressure on wherever they go. And that was kind of the point of the video. Where are they going to go? Maybe they're going to move north, south, east, west. Who knows? Maybe they're going to move out of the state. Maybe they're going to move out of the country. But it doesn't really matter. It temporarily depresses the area that they're in, if that's happening. And of course, we've seen this over and over and over and over again with the shutting of military bases, as an example. I was managing property when where they're decommissioning nuclear power plants. They had 11 to 12,000 people working at that plant. This was in Eastern Washington, way back in the day when I was just getting into the business. But I remember the whole town just completely shut down. So I'm not saying that that's what this is. What I'm saying, though, is when you have people that are disrupted in life, and when you list a home, that's serious, right? Like that's not somebody who's gonna stay put. So that's all we were trying to make that point, and it's going to be interesting to see if this is just the tip of the iceberg or not.
I don't know if it was you, Danille, that mentioned it. I think it may have been that you were, or maybe it was Ken that was saying that the average federal worker makes $106,000 per year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, it's a pretty decent salary. So I mean,
Probably
these
one of the
jobs
top.
aren't going to be easily, replaced, right? These people aren't easily going to find another job that pays that or more.
What we've found is a lot of people, whether they're partners, married couple, what have you, that work for the government, that they both, in a lot of cases, work for the government. And a lot of times the same actual department. I have a friend of mine that I spoke with yesterday, and we think about, and his wife had a very high paying job working for a subcontractor for the federal government, and they worked in direct, connection with USAID. And that whole company shut down. And he was telling me about the different tranches of, first they, and this happened very quick in a matter of weeks. And first they, offered a buyout, severance package. And then the second wasn't as sweet of a severance package, the second tranche. And then the third tranche was they just shut down. They lost an $8 million contract and just closed their doors completely. So I think a lot of people, what they what they don't realize, like you said, Ken, you hear a business close down and 1,000 people in one area or one town lose their jobs. That's like massive, right? But we don't even think about the multiplier, the job multiplier I've heard you mention that as well. And Danille, I think it was you that was talking about the multiplier effect.
Yeah, I mean, all the services in the area, people don't need them or they can't afford them anymore. So then that affects them. And Todd, you're more familiar with this area than we are. I mean, it's going to affect DC, but it's also going to affect Virginia, Maryland, maybe even more, because if DC real estate goes down, people may want to move closer to, town than be on the outskirts so much for their commute and everything.
I saw in a report, and yes, you're exactly right. I was talking with someone I'd mentioned earlier in a podcast, EJ and Tony, and he's with the Heritage Foundation, and we podcasted yesterday together, and he was kind of afraid, I wouldn't say afraid, but he was talking about the effects of the shutdowns and the job loss in DC, and he was talking about how it would affect Virginia. Of course, that's where he lives. And then he said in some of the areas that are in the surrounding areas. But what a lot of people don't realize is that for years now, people have been telecommuting. And even before that, people have been driving. I mean, you have two counties that are, Frederick and Carroll County, Maryland, that are actually, you have a Route 270 that goes in, and then that's a direct shot into the DC area. And then we have the 495, which touches a whole lot of counties that go around that beltway, that capital beltway. So we have a lot. I mean, hundreds of thousands of employees in Maryland are federal workers. So when we're hearing already, our governor saying, they already set up a website for people that are affected. They're already talking about, how are we going to help them pay their mortgage payments? A lot of people, I don't think we've got some data we're going to go over, but a lot of people I think are staying put. They're like, well, I'm going to wait and see how this thing plays out. You're going to have to kick me out of my house, right? So, I mean, maybe that's what they're thinking. I don't know. But I saw a report, and Danille, you spoke about this in your video. In 2024, about 440,000 federal government jobs were created. Now, these probably aren't the jobs that were overstated, if I had to guess. These are probably like, we're making jobs, right? And that's almost 37,000 jobs a month.
Yep. It was a big percentage of the job growth in 24 was federal.
So I want to ask a sensitive question, and this really has nothing to do with, I think it's bipartisan. I don't think that, I don't think it really has anything to do with, look, we want people to be, accountable for what we're paying them to do. It doesn't matter whether it's in a government role, if it's in Joe sitting right here beside me, we want to make sure that people are doing the right job for the people, right? That are paying. Are you both, and if you don't want to say, just say you don't want to say it, but are you supporting shrinking the federal government?
Well,
I am. I'll just tell you. Well, here's the thing, Todd. If you run your own business and you're looking at let's say the red or black, is it positive, is it negative? Like, you're constantly pushing and pulling and figuring out, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, that is the way things are supposed to be. And when you create an environment, in my opinion, of overhead and layering and all that kind of stuff and inefficiency, and we all know there's inefficiencies. By the way, there's inefficiencies in my business right now that I was talking to Danille about last night. So I'm constantly working on these inefficiencies. But just think of the bureaucracy that we have right now in so many areas. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be some very, very bad moves that are going to be made as a part of this. It's going to be one big pie. But yes, I'm completely in support. Everything that I've seen in the USAID and that kind of stuff, it's a no-brainer, right? But there's going to be some other things. I've been super frustrated as a father with kids. I don't know how you feel about the Department of Education. for years. Obviously, I wrote all the books with Rich Dad Poor Dad and all that stuff about the financial education, all that stuff. And that's actually what kind of gave us the platform for that. But I don't want to go down too far of a rabbit hole there. But yes, I do believe that there needs to be a shakeup, just like in anything. But I also believe that those agencies are definitely needed largely, but maybe new leadership, maybe whatever it is. But are they? Some are probably really, really, really overstaffed, I would guess, and it'll be very interesting to see. But overall, I think so. I think every business needs it. I think every business needs a cleansing. But unfortunately, what happens with entrepreneurs like you and me, a recession does that for us. Like we have no choice. We have to do that in order, because we're trying to make a living. But when you're getting federal funds and it's tenured and all that weird stuff that we all know, it does complicate things.
As you can imagine, me being a Maryland business, a lot of my clients are government. And they have been, even when I was back in my contracting days, and work for different agencies and things like that. And it always amazed me. And I would hear them talk about things. There was, at least from my understanding, there has been very little incentive to save. They set up these. One of the things that I've always been amazed at, this major flaw. And in fact, I have at one point in time, and I podcasted about it, when I was working at I'll just say one of the facilities, and we had gotten to the point at the end of the year, and the one that was in charge of procurement had called up and said, "How much gravel can I get for X amount of dollars?" And I'm like, well, how much gravel do you need? And they're like, well, we don't really need it right now. We've got some excess in our account, and if we don't use it, we'll lose it. And we just figured that, we're going to stockpile the stone. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, wait a minute. Well, where does that money come from? I mean, why don't you just say we didn't need it and give it back, right? And, talk about year to year and expenses and things like that. I do get budgets, but I never really understood that there was no incentive that said, if you can save money, these are the incentives that are going to be in place for you. I don't know. I mean, maybe there are, and I'm just ignorant to it, but I always remembered that. And I never really understood it.
Yeah, I think that's a real thing, Todd. I think that they, if they don't spend it, they lose it, right? So, but I feel a little differently than Ken. I want to be clear. I agree with some of the government cuts, but I also think that there's a people cost. And, normally if you're doing a bad job at work, you kind of like see it coming a little bit. You maybe have 1 write-up, 2 write-ups, 3 write-ups. But I just feel like these people, put yourself in that situation, you just lose your job and you have a mortgage and you have bills, maybe you have kids. It's just, it's not that I don't agree with it. It's just that, I feel like there could have been some cushioning, maybe a severance for everybody that got let go. I don't know. It just feels sudden, and I do feel bad for the people that got let go.
And just to add on to that, I think look, I think that when we look in any organization that isn't running efficiently, it all comes down to leadership, right? And I've said that in our own business, our own industry, as I'm a real estate broker. And what I've watched, just in our own industry, I don't see much management that's happening. These agents are running around, flying by the seat of their pants. Danille, you're an agent. You understand that. You know what I'm talking about. When you deal with other agents, you see it in the way that they present contracts, and they don't know what they're doing. And you're going, well, who the hell? How long have you been in business? And who is you? Oh, yeah, okay, you work for this company or with this company, and you can understand it. I think it all boils down to leadership. And you know what? There are going to be people that are going to be let go, and as a result, that are hard workers, that it'll be devastating like anything else. It unfortunately, I don't know how to how to deal with that. I mean, it's, if it were my department, I could see, like you said, this guy's a slacker, she's a slacker. This is get off the phone, get up. But I'm in the grocery store the other day, walking down the aisle, and it's a very bad look when the employee is on the phone trying to stock or pull, and they're laughing and talking, and you could tell they're on a personal call. Where's the leadership to say, get off your phone? I have a friend of mine, he was just talking about this, his employees on the phone. Where do you draw the line? It's a bad look. If you have clients that come in, it's a bad look, right? It's a leadership problem. The unfortunate thing is, I'm sure that a lot of the bloatedness that we're seeing is because of just that. You have lack of leadership, right? You're not efficient. You're not getting things done. You need more people to do it. And, and as a result, that's.
I would just add one thing, Todd. I mean, whose fault is it if I think there's an illusion that, having a W-2 job or a paycheck, you have a level of control personally. And you and I both know that's false. So, so part of the whole reason that you and I do these podcasts and I write these books and all the things that we do to try to teach is to let people realize that there is a day of reckoning for all of us, right? I've gone through the mud. You've gone through the mud. This is in this particular case, some people are going to be going through that too. But you have to set yourself up personally. You have to understand financials. You have to understand gold, silver, oil, crypto, Bitcoin, real estate, stock market, and not just be relying on your W-2 job. And I think that, that's also going to get exposed here. If I don't know how many streams of income you have coming in, but I know plenty of people that have 5, 6, 7, 8 streams of income coming in at all times. I certainly have that. Danille certainly has that. And so when a shoe falls, like is happening, you're like, okay, this shoe's fallen. Now I can move over here. So you got to set up your financial base. And so, I don't want to punch anybody while they're down, but at the end of the day, this is a opportunity to realize that, not everything's certain. And that's the entire point of these podcasts.
Well said. I agree with you. I think it will be a time where people will unfortunately may be forced to reflect. And where do you see rental prices going in the future? Do you see where? I mean, look, Powell has been talking about it since the beginning of 2020. Maybe it was the end of 2020, but he's been saying rental and shelter inflation must come down. Do you see where we will have? And are you preparing yourself for any kind of deflation in rent?
Well, we already are seeing it. So it's been happening already as a result. The way the rental market works is, here's the weird, in 2008, things were very different. In 2008, which I went through, people were moving out of my apartments and buying homes. That's what was going on 6, 7, 8 during that time period. And so nobody's looking at the rental market at that time, right? Because it's in trouble and we're fighting for tenants and we're losing them to home builders. All right. So what's happening now, it's the opposite. So single family homes are expensive. Interest rates are expensive. And if you take a look at the cost of a mortgage versus the cost of rent, there's a massive gap. And it's at an all-time high. So typically there needs to be the way to keep the rental market in balance, believe it or not, is to add more units. You want to help the consumer, give them more choices. And that's it. And so same thing on the single family side. So in my opinion, the right balance should be you move into a rental, build your credit, move out, buy a home, and be on your way. That's what the rental market's for. It's not meant for lifestyle, long-term trap. They're trapped in there. So, we're a piece of the overall wealth building, and that's all. And right now it's out of sync. And so, we have a market in Phoenix right now. If you can wrap your head around this, massive construction, massive units hitting right now. It's on the west side. And it's where the Cardinals football is. They have a stadium over there. It's over in that area, and it's really, really growing, and it's really popular. 2 months free, $99 moves you in. Wow. That's the deal on the table right now. So that's how bad the real estate market is on the west side of Phoenix. Now, it's not that way everywhere, but the point is we're already seeing that. But the issue is going to be those will all get absorbed at some point. It'll be years for sure on the west side. But and then at that point, there's not a lot of new construction coming again because interest rates jacked up, a couple of years ago, and people pulled back. So, so that's why I was telling you we're buying right now when things are disrupted. And as you know, you buy on the numbers of today, not on the numbers of tomorrow. And so we think it's an opportunity, but we're definitely seeing flat rent, negative rent, all that.
Yeah.
And Todd, I think on the single family side, it's a little different. So we are seeing decreases in rent, but with your single family homes with a garage and a yard, you're still seeing demand for that because they're not building those. So, while rents are still down a little bit, we're still seeing a lot of demand. On the condo side for the single family investor, that's a lot tougher because you're now directly competing with these big apartment buildings.
What's crushing, what nobody's talking about, Todd, maybe you've chatted about this on one of your podcasts, is operational costs. Just let's throw the mortgage out, period. So there's a really good bank rate study that came out last month. It said that the cost to just own a home is about 18 grand. That's it. Like that's all in, right? That's taxes, that's insurance, that's all the landscaping or whatever else the capital work you might have to do. So just think about that. That's $1,500 a month. So when you start to take a look at that, not including mortgage, and you start to just move over to the rental side, it's a pretty compelling argument. But it's not supposed to be that way. Like I have 2 kids that are in their 20s that want to buy a home, and and they're saving, and there's a whole generation of people that can't afford that first home, and I think that's actually the real problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lastly, just to kind of recap and talking about something, we've seen a lot of multifamily operators needing to do cash calls, and raise funding because they're in trouble. How much of the multifamily space is financed by regional banks?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. So it depends on the deal. So most all new construction is regional. So you're going to find any and all new construction is typically some kind of regional bank.
So when you're buying, are you buying from the bank? Are they in receivership, or how are you buying right now?
Not yet. So it's a great question. Here, there's a couple things going on. There was a bunch of debt funds that got created, and all that is for your listeners is a bunch of people like us raised a bunch of money and started issuing out as a form of debt as opposed to equity. That's all. But they're not banks, and so what we're seeing is a lot of those people are just taking back some of those properties, and they're in their asset management category right now. So they're, oddly enough, they're not even listed. So let's say you lent to me on a deal and I'm underwater. The debt is more than the property is worth. You just take it back, and then you put it in your asset management company, and you just manage it until the market comes back around. So that's actually what's kind of happening behind the scenes. Now, a bank is very different, obviously, but most of the stuff that I'm dealing with is the agencies, Fannie, Freddie Mac, that kind of stuff. The defaults are still extremely low. And we're also finding that people are working with you. So in our space, I just got back from the IMN conference in Laguna Beach and the National Multi-Housing Conference in Vegas. And I literally, it's like, 30 to 40 minute meetings, for like days on end. And so I really got an education about all of this. And what we're seeing is, this is interesting. If I owe, let's say you, the same amount that the property's worth, there's really no incentive for you to work with me. You're like, I don't need Ken. I'm going to take the property back. All the equity gets lost, but you take it back, put it in your asset management division. If my property, the one I finance with you, and I'm 10, 20, $30 million below the mortgage, you're like, hey, Ken, I'm going to work with you a little bit. I'm going to keep it on your side of the ledger, and you go ahead and work through all those issues, and I'm just going to put it on my watch list. So ironically, the ones that are kind of close to the mortgage amount, there's no incentive to keep a guy like me. And if there's a little bit of equity, then of course I'm going to fight for that on behalf of my LP. So those are the kind of scenarios that we're starting to play out right now, and we're not seeing it in the banks at the moment.
That's interesting. I'll say this real quick. I remember one time I was listening to, and Trump, love him or not, whether you like him or don't like him, he was a real estate guy and played the part, pretty well. That's, I think, how he made his money. But I think it was Barbara Walters was interviewing him one time, and this is along the line of what you're saying. And she said, and he had just come back from, I don't know, I think it was a casino deal or whatever, where, he got out of it, was able to get out of it. And I think she said something like, how did you do it? And my recollection is he said, Barbara, if you owe the bank $100,000 for your mortgage and you can't pay it, you're in trouble, right? And she said, yes. And then he said, but if you owe the bank $100 million and you can't pay it back, they're in trouble. So they have to work with you. So I think it was something like a conversation like that. But anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, look,
it's actually extremely true.
Yeah.
Think about it. The bank's going to take that loss. They don't want to take the loss. Either does a private debt fund. They don't have to show it if I'm still trying to manage through that with
that was Greenspan, and they're too big to fail, right? I mean, let's support these companies where they're too big to fail. Well, look, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. We'll let you run, but thank you for the update, and all of Ken and Danille's information are in the show notes. Ken's website and their YouTube channel, and if you want to hear more from him, check them out. Ken has great books. I've been listening to him and reading his books for years. So thank you so much,
Thanks,
guys.
Todd.
Thanks,
everybody.
guys. All
Talk
right.
soon. Okay, you got it. All right. I know we got a couple callers that are lined up. Sorry about that, a little deviation. Hopefully you enjoyed it, but I did want to talk about the rental market, what was happening in the rents. I know we have, let's go ahead and bring David and Eric on and get introduced, and they could just hang out here with us while we're talking about what's happening in the DC, Virginia, and Maryland housing market. We're going to hopefully clear some things up with the stats. But let's go ahead. We got two callers that are on tap. Let's see what they're all about. Huh? They're on. David?
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, David. How are you, man? Thanks
I'm good.
for
How you doing?
being patiently waiting in the backdrop there. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so currently living in the DC area myself. Also tied up in some of the stuff going on in the news, and just trying to wait out and see. I think a lot of people, especially in my age range, have been kind of stuck, like you talk about, and I appreciate. Haven't really had a chance to get in the housing market since the COVID really started hitting, unfortunately. So kind of trying to wait and see if there's any actual change in pricing as we go forward with some of these layoffs, if they happen.
Yeah. So are you working? Are you a federal employee? Did we lose him? Are you muted, David? We can't hear you. All right, let's go. Do we have somebody else on here? Huh? That's it. All right. Okay. Well, we're trying to talk to people that are affected by these layoffs, but let's go ahead and, without further ado here, let's go ahead and take a look at the data. So what we're looking at here, guys, we're going to go through this, Washington, D.C. and surrounding counties and cities. We're going to talk about what is happening in the housing market. We're going to run through this. I encourage you, if you're in these affected areas or you want to know more, we're going to go relatively quick. So, you can watch it, rewatch it, hit the pause, screenshot, and even print these out if you care to do so. But when we're talking about the Washington, D.C. and surrounding counties and cities, this is actually published on montgomeryplanning.org. What we're looking at here is a map of D.C. So you can see Washington, D.C. here in the middle in this square. And D.C. kind of straddles Maryland and Virginia. And what we're looking at is, and I added one more county because they don't really have it reflected here, but it's Washington County, because a lot of people that I know, we do transactions in Washington County. A lot of people work for the government, the federal government. So I included that despite them having that overlay in this area. But really, what I want to show you here is if you look at Frederick, which is in Maryland, this line, this is 270. That comes, it's a straight shot right into Montgomery, right through Montgomery County, right into the DC Beltway, which is 495, which is this loop that goes around here. I'll slow my cursor down. That's 495. And then over here, coming out of Baltimore, but really through Howard County, this is the 95 corridor. So this is how a lot of people get into DC to work. Now, what we've seen through the years with the work from home, where a lot of these departments have said you don't have to come in, they could scatter even further about in the Maryland region and extend into different counties. But these are the core counties where we see the most federal workers or government contractors that are supporting the federal workforce or federal government. They live around here. So we're going to break these areas down, kind of go through them for you right now. So we'll start with the District of Columbia itself, because the news has been, oh my gosh, the world is falling and the DC housing market is crashing all of a sudden. And what we're seeing is that's not 100% so. It takes people some time. So if you lost your job 2 or 3 weeks ago, a month ago, maybe you're thinking about putting your house on the market, but there are a lot of people that are just holding back and saying, you know what, we're going to wait and see if the judges can tie this up, if they can stop this DOGE action where they're defunding departments and things like that. I do want to say that is the DOGE is working under the executive branch, right? So that's dealing with fiscal policy. And fiscal policy isn't really from my understanding, the federal judges to decide. So a lot of these, a lot of these experts are saying that it's going to go through, that the judges may be able to delay these actions, but it's going to ultimately go through, is what I'm hearing. So we're dealing with fiscal policy, and the way that they're wrapping this around the fiscal policy and the way that this is an executive branch decision is because it's how taxpayer money is spent. So when we were looking at fiscal policy, fiscal monetary policy, fiscal policy is more executive. The monetary is more the Federal Reserve and Congress. And what we're looking at with fiscal policy is directly on how taxpayer money is being spent. So I think that's how they're sort of moving forward with all of this. But what I've done here is there's 2 slides that we're going to look at with each one of these areas. The first slide is a quick market watch or snapshot that is letting you know what has happened in the last 7 days. So as we look here, in the last 7 days, we've had 53 new coming soon. We have 172 new actives hit the market. We have 26, a little fuzzy, I may be off a digit or two. Looks like 25 or 26 back to active, which means they were under contract. It fell through. They've gone back to active. 121 in the last week. Price decreases, 10 price increases. A lot of these are new construction. I'm describing this to you now. I'm not going to do this on each one of the markets that we go through. Active under contract, it looks like 92. What that means, when a agent puts a property is active under contract, a lot of times what that means is they're not 100% certain that it's going to go through. Maybe there's some contingencies that they're unsure about, and the seller is saying, I want to continue to show my house. When you put it in pending status, that's kind of it. So the pending, we have 66, 117 closed in the last 7 days, 27 temporarily off the market. Maybe they had a water pipe burst or something. They're changing some carpet on some suggestions that their house isn't selling. They've temporarily taken it off the market. 27 of those, 42 withdrawals, 30 canceled, and 17 expired. So in a withdrawn, canceled, or expired scenario, a lot of times the seller is frustrated with their agent and they're making changes. So they've changed it up. But anyway, so you can see here, District of Columbia not falling into shambles as a result of what we're hearing. The next slide we're going to look at here is Washington, D.C. in more of an overall, okay? So these slides where you see the columns, what we're looking at is the accumulative numbers of what's going on right now, not just the last 7 days. So in total, we have 104 in coming soon status. Now, one of the big MLS changes that was made was before we had to have a home go from coming soon, if we start marketing that property in the multiple list, getting it out to all the aggregating sites, Zillows, the Realtor.coms of the world. We could only do that for 21 days for an existing home. We could do it for 2 years for a new home, because sometimes it takes that long to construct a new home. But in an existing home, from the time that we put it on the market before the big ruling changed last year, the MLS rulings, the rules changed. If we put that in coming soon status, within 21 days, it had to hit the market. Well, they took that away and said you could essentially put it in coming soon status however long as you want, so long as you establish a day that it will go live. So what we're looking at here, coming soon, 104. Looks like, let me expand this a little bit so that I can see it. Joe, did that mess you up? Huh? Okay, I'm going to expand it so I can see it. So here we go. Actives, 1,943 actives. Now, something interesting in all of these slides that I'm showing you where it's columned like this, I only did houses that are over 200,000, because if you work for the federal government and we're talking about, this ultimate crash that's happening because of job loss, chances are you live in a house that is worth more than $200,000. So all of these, every slide where you see these columns of accumulative totals are only houses, all types, flats, condos, single family, attached, all types over 200,000, but 1,943 active. The most disturbing number here is the price, the reduction of pricing. 35.9%, 697 active homes on the market in DC have had at least one price reduction. Active under contract, 378. Again, there's a reason why they haven't put it in pending. And then, of course, your pending or temporarily off the market, 178, and then pending, 336. Now, before we go any further, Joe, let's pull up the slide from last fall. Say again? It's a clip. Let's play the clip. Let's make sure that the audio is playing, please. Show you guys DC. So here's what we're looking at here. This is Washington, D.C. Probably, Joe, when was this? 5 months ago. All right. There were 1,512 actives in D.C. And you can see all the green arrows of price reductions. And Joe, what was the total in price reductions? To the way. For those of you out there that don't think that home prices are coming down, I could sit here and cover the whole country with you. There we go. Alexander City, Virginia. How about you pull it up and then when you find it? How's that? All right. I think it was about 42% of the houses in DC 5 months ago. Is that what it was? 42%. 42% of the homes 5 months ago in DC were under price reduction. So if anything, price reductions have come down, right? So we had 1,543, something like that. We got 1,943 now versus 5 months ago. The price reductions have come down, but still very high, 35, almost 36% of the houses have had price reductions. Now, the important thing to remember as we're going through these slides also is that prices have come down. The median price has come down when you're looking at house to house. Now, Joe, I don't know what happened to my ability to scroll through. Oh, was this the next one? Oh, here we go. What happened? All right. Washington, D.C., we're finished with that. Now we go to Montgomery County. So here we have it. Montgomery County, right on the edge of the D.C. line, coming soon in the last week, 95 houses. Again, not a flood of inventory. New actives, 151. Back to actives, 23. Price decreases, 66. Price increases, 11. Active under contract, 85. Pending, 111. Close, 140. Temporarily off the market, 17. Withdrawn, 25. Canceled, 7. Expired, 8. Getting into the Montgomery County slide, the cumulative 163 and coming soon, active 728. We're going to focus in on guys' price reductions, 217 price reductions. 29.8% of the houses have had at least one price reduction. Howard County, again, you can see looking at the coming soon and the active in the last 7 days. No fire sales, no urgency with sellers putting their homes on the market. Coming soon, 157, 148 total actives in Howard County at 200,000 plus. 27% have been price reduced. Prince George's County, we're starting to get into seeing a little bit more activity. A lot of federal workers here. You could see new actives that have hit the market. Incoming soon status, cumulative 157 incoming soon, 918 houses active, 37.7% of the homes on the market in Prince George's County have had price reductions. Charles County, this is the county that I added that again wasn't displayed as a lot of the workforce, federal workforce in the map that I first showed you. But again, you could still see not a lot of new active inventory, 34, 14 coming soon, not a big deal. Charles County, again, still massive price reductions, 31 houses incoming soon, a cumulative 337 total houses on the market, 26% price reductions. Frederick County, same thing, not that big a deal. You can see it right here. It is, guys. If it would have happened in the last 7 days, this is information as of this morning. I got up very early this morning. This was not easy to put together. Our MLS is antiquated. It sucks, actually. A lot of times the Zillow sites and the like do a better job than our own MLS in presenting this data and making it easy. And I don't think they want agents to know this. I don't think they want to make it easy for agents to find this information out. So we've got to aggregate this data, a lot of it manually. And if you're an agent, you know what I'm talking about. Frederick County, a cumulative, only 64 homes and coming soon, 278 actives, not skyrocketing inventory. 32% of the houses in Frederick County have price reductions. It's also important to say it's one of the most expensive property tax counties in the state of Maryland to live in Frederick County. It's a big deterrent in this area. If you're not working with a federal government job where you're making top pay, if you're a school teacher, you're probably not going to live directly in the county of Frederick. You'll probably commute to it because the homes are very expensive and the property taxes take it over the edge of affordability for most. Carroll County, this is another county that joins right next to Frederick County that we see a lot of federal employees have moved to. Again, not major inventory increases. Collectively, 34 and coming soon, 153 active, 24.8% price reduction in Carroll County. Now we'll move into Arlington, Virginia. We'll cover the couple of the counties and cities in Virginia, and then we'll wrap up. Again, not a big increase in Arlington, Virginia, with coming on the market in the last 7 days. Arlington, Virginia here, stats collectively coming soon, 45 homes, active 212, 27.8% price reduced. You would not see these price reductions necessarily a year and a half ago. In fact, you would see price increases, not price reductions. Alexandria City, again, nothing major happening here. Coming soon, 34 actives, 150, 28.6% of the homes have price reductions. As we're getting into Fairfax City County and Loudoun County, the last one, you're talking about some of the richest real estate in America. A lot of the houses, multi-million-dollar estates, beautiful farms, horse farms. So you're looking at a lot of inventory that's well over $1 million in price. But again, look at these numbers. Fairfax City, it's a small area. In Virginia, in Fairfax County, nothing really. Coming soon, 11, active 18, 2 price reduced at 11%. Bigger numbers here in Fairfax County, probably a lot of federal employees and contractors here. But again, we're not seeing alarming numbers stack up in the market. Coming soon, 256, active 625, 24.5% of the active homes have had price reductions. And then finally, Loudoun County. Again, this is a lot of people know Leesburg's and Loudoun County, one of the cities. But again, nothing huge happening here. 334 actives, 96 coming soon, but big price reductions. So a lot of these, again, are multi-million-dollar houses, homes that it could be 10, 12, 15 million dollars that have had price reduction in those stats. That pretty much brings us to a close here. We'll take a couple of these comments and questions, but I do want you to understand the housing market is still not looking good, guys. Affordability is terrible. Price reductions we're seeing across the country, averaging 33, 35% in all markets across the country. We're in some of the hottest real estate in the country, despite the fact of the job losses that we're seeing. But I do expect these numbers to skyrocket. I do expect home prices to continue to fall. And I do expect that if a lot of these government jobs are lost, we're going to see some massive, massive fallout and recession conditions that could possibly hit Virginia, Northern Virginia, D.C., and Maryland. So what do we got? We have any starred comments here, Joe? All right, Super Chats. Thank you, Dean D. Welcome back. Tuesdays with Todd. It's just coincidental that it's Tuesday, but thanks so much. Appreciate your Super Chat. Another Super Chat. Break My Wallet Motorsport. Thank you so much. Just wait until DOGE starts looking at federal contractors. I think that's already happening. We're seeing by the elimination of a lot of the funding We're seeing the fallouts. I gave an example of my friend's wife that was let go by a company that worked for or with USAID. That will exceed the employee layoffs, and contractors make more money in a lot of cases. 100%. The owner of these contracting businesses certainly make way more than $106,000 a year, if that is in fact the average wage of the federal worker. All right, another super chat. T.A. Chapman, thank you so much. Good morning, Sachs. I know everyone is incredibly busy, but is an interview with Mitch Wexler in the cards? You know, we did interview with Mitch, so we did appreciate what he had to say. Property tax scam is insane, and him and Travis are amazing. Jack at Nobody Special sent me. Thank you. Shout out to Jack, and shout out to Travis and Mitch Wexler here. Look, I mean, I hope these guys are successful in what they're doing. I've interviewed people like Steve Hanke that have said that property taxes are written into the first rendition of the Constitution. I don't know. I'm not an expert at that. I don't like paying property tax as much as anybody else. I think at the very least, property taxes should be in check. We need to know, again, where this money is going. You're taking the money for the property taxes. If you just add up all the people on the street and you look at how much revenue is generated by property taxes, and they say a lot of that's supposed to go to the schools and the police stations and the firehouses and our public works. Certainly, it'd be nice to see where does that money go. There would be nice to see some accountability on that. At the very least, I don't think anybody has a problem with paying their fair share. They're paying their way, whether it's property taxes, taxes in general, cost of living, cost of doing business. We have a poll. Joe, we can pull that poll up. One of the things with the poll was, are you willing to go through a little bit of pain for a better economy and to get prices in check? 2,268 votes said yes. 72% said yes. Not 2,269. It's mounting up. We can watch it. 22% said no, and 6% said see my answer in the chat. So we wanted to give an opportunity for people to express themselves a little further in the chat. But it looks like the bulk of you that say, hey, you're willing to go through an economic downturn, even if it means that your wealth diminishes. I'm willing to pay to get this back into equilibrium. I think everyone is willing to stick together if we can all get on the same page and stop cussing at each other and hating each other and separating each other. One of the things that EJ said in my interview with him, again, Heritage Foundation, very conservative group, but what he said was one of the problems, and that he wished that we wouldn't do as American people, is that we wouldn't look at people because they're a Democrat or because they're a Republican and assume that they stand for everything that you're being told that you should be or should agree to with the Democrat or Republican parties. And I thought that was brilliant. I think it's now's the time, in my opinion, that we come together as American people. I think that there are certain groups that want to divide us. They don't want us to come together. They don't want us to be united in loving one another for who we are, people, human beings first, not hating people for what their political affiliation is or what the color of their skin is. I mean, we need to get back to, we're all God's people. And, we're parents, fathers, mothers, children, friends. We need to remember that. We need to get back to that. I'd like to see that happen over the next several years, regardless of whether you are a Trump fan or not. All right, we got a caller. Let's bring him in. All right, hey, what's going on?
Hey, Todd, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, so my name is Daniel. I live in California. The housing market here is it's garbage right now.
Welcome to the world that we live in. Welcome to the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
The housing market's that way all over the country.
So, yeah.
At least if you want to, at least if you want to live where there are jobs.
Okay, good point. So
Right.
here's my thought. I struggled a little bit listening to Ken, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his wife's name.
Danille.
Yep. I struggled a little bit listening to them, and call me out otherwise if you feel differently. But one of the things that really stuck with me was he said, right now is a great time for a buyer because of concessions. I think there's a twofold to that. And here
he was talking about multifamily buyers. He was referring to multifamily. Yeah. He was referring to what he's doing. It's a great time to buy because apartment operators are losing their butts. So what he's doing, he's in a buying trend right now because they're failing and he's gobbling them up, which is what smart money does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your advice to the average home buyer sitting on the sidelines being put in a place? So I'll give you a perfect example, and I'll just give you my real world example. I have saved an immense amount of money, and even with that money, investing it smartly in several different entities and making upwards to 15 to 25%. It doesn't seem like investing in real estate is really a fruitful investment right now, just because of where the market sits. And
Agreed.
With it being at such an all-time high, it doesn't seem that profitability would really be to the interest of a home buyer right now. And I just mean in twofold. You're not getting your money back on rent, and you're not getting the highest return of investment as far as owning versus renting, because renting is just so much cheaper than paying a mortgage right now. What is your recommendation for people like that in that situation? Because I would love.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. So here's the thing: if people can afford to buy, they do so because it's a lifestyle. So what happens is we have been thinking too much about a home being wealth, and this is one of the reasons why we've seen profiteers on, just say, single family houses. And by the way, one of the things with Ken is that, and a lot of people get angry about investors, real estate investors. Ken is a multi-family investor, exactly what you would expect from a real estate investor, because as he said, an apartment is, in his eyes, as the operator, is meant to be a temporary stepping stone in America for people to move into, to gain independence out of mom and dad's home, to save money that they can then in turn buy a home and participate in the American dream of home ownership. What we've done, and this is, keep in mind, indoctrination of where the way that we think doesn't happen over months and years. It happens over decades. And what we've done is, look, I can pick a couple things. Starter homes. Let me tell you something. We've indoctrinated buyers to believe that a starter home, for the good of buying a McMansion one day, is something that should be inadequate for you as an owner. What? Where did we even come on? A starter home? Oh, what? A shed? I mean, you mean something that I have to grow out if I have kids? I mean, I was raised in a house that was less than 1,000 square feet. We had one bathroom, 3 bedrooms, and you had to walk through the bathroom to get to the 3rd bedroom. Imagine that, right? I didn't know any different. I loved it. It was home. Nobody said to the house, to my grandfather, who originally bought the house, my great-grandfather, sorry, and then passed it when he passed to my grandfather, and it was a multi-generational house. Where did we come up with the idea that that's not normal, that's not okay, that we have to have certain things, right? So we've built these houses that people can't afford. We're making Constellation Energy and all these other companies rich because we're heating and air conditioning homes that we don't even live in the space. Where did we think it was a great idea that we need a 9-foot ceiling? Okay, well, maybe we're a little bit taller than our ancestors were, but an 8-foot ceiling's not enough. We need a 9-foot we need a 10-foot ceiling. Let's do 10-foot ceilings on the first floor, 9-foot ceilings on the second floor. And this is the American dream.
So you can maximize price of square per foot.
What we have done is we have twisted this whole roof over our head, shelter inflation, the number one biggest thing that we'll ever buy in our life or invest in. And we've made it inadequate for many from the start. Just be satisfied with this as a starter home. You're going to move on. Now, look, don't get me wrong. To some people, they do better financially and they want to upsize their house. They want to have a bigger house and impress all their friends so that when they go home, they go, man, did you see that? How many houses have I been in and walked through that people wanted that and they couldn't even afford the furniture to put in because they wanted that big house? So what we've done is kind of set this thing up from the start to fail ultimately, right? So what do we see when we talk to first-time buyers or we talk to people that are sidelined, and it's a terrible story. They can't afford it. We've now priced it out. We've profiteered to the point to where we've dropped asset prices. Interest rates to raise asset prices. So now what? Well, you look at it, you go, okay, we got to get back to basics. This thing we got to go through some crash here. We got to get back to basics. We got to get back to what matters. And it's going to start in the home. It's going to start when people start saying no, right? It has to start in their home. You have to start realizing what your wants are, what your needs are, what your dreams are, and you're either going to continue to feed into the system or people are going to just say no. And that's what we're seeing right now with real estate sales that are backed off. We've seen more generational houses formed since 2020 than we have in decades. We've seen more millennials move out of apartments and move back home to the tune of over 1 million back home with mom and dad. So, what is the story? A home is not an investment. It's not meant to be. Okay, yeah, it appreciates year over year, but your cash depreciates year over year. Right? Inflation eats away at the money that you spent. So it may look like you're getting this big financial gain, but at the end of the day, you're not. And you've maintained your house, hopefully. So you've spent $20,000 on the heating and air system that failed. You put a new roof on it. Your kitchen's outdated. You've put money into your kitchen. So no, it's not meant to necessarily get out of it unless you're buying it in a rock bottom time of distress and you're building it all with sweat equity. Homes are lifestyles. They are lifestyles that unfortunately have gotten away from the reality of American people, especially our young American people. And that's a tragedy. It's terrible. It's terrible.
So,
I know it's not what you want to hear, but we got to get away from this profit. This is what a home is. A home. It's meant to be shelter, a place in the community, a place to raise your kids, a place that your landlord doesn't disrupt you and come in with a 24-hour notice, a place where your landlord doesn't sell your place and your new landlord doesn't not renew your lease, a place when you have things that are broken and your landlord's a slumlord and doesn't fix anything, right? A landlord that tells you can't have parties or build a horseshoe pit in the backyard. There are reasons and benefits and lifestyle. It's a lifestyle owning a home. We have to find a way to get back to that.
So I have my own opinions of this, but what do you think is the fix to that at this point? And I think I know the answer, but I'm curious as to what your opinion is.
We need to stop financial manipulation of interest rates for one. The unfortunate thing is when we drop rates, asset prices go up. And, no, the Fed rate doesn't, directly affect mortgage rates, but the 10-year Treasury does. A lot of that is confidence in the market and the manipulation of the Fed rate. Through the years, the mortgage rates have mirrored the overnight trading rate that the Fed raises and lowers. And it's meant to get us out of hard times and stimulate good times. The problem is, if before we started seeing this market manipulation, if you go back 200 years, look at the booms and the busts, every 2 or 3 years we had a financial catastrophe of some sort. It's really an adjustment. It was bringing things back into equilibrium. So now what we don't want to do is, on your watch as a politician or on your tenure as a, whether it's baby boomer or Generation X, we don't want to see that go back. We don't want to see any type of reduction of wealth. We want to find ways to support a moving forward scenario. Eventually it catches up. And now we're in the biggest bubble we've ever seen. Not just a housing bubble, but we're in a stock market bubble. We're looking at what's happening with government jobs. That's a bubble. When you're adding hundreds of thousands of jobs in a year, that's bubblish. When you can't afford to pay them, and the only way to afford to pay them is to print more debt and to borrow more money from the printing machine, that's not the way that businesses operate. You heard Ken say that. You have red and black on the balance sheet, right, on the income statement. You're either operating in profit or operating in losses. Maybe you're breaking even. But how can a business operate in a loss? They can't. What do? They accumulate debt. They take on loans. They accumulate debt, stack it in their losses, pay for the losses, and hoping next year that they can come out of it. Well, you have 2 or 3 years of losses and you're bankrupt. So, this is unfortunately what we're looking at right now. You're living through it. And it's unfortunate, but you're going to come out of it. You're going to find a way. Keep saving your money, keep investing, look for your opportunity, get to a point to where you can make a lifestyle decision and don't worry about the profit. I have to live somewhere. I can afford it. I'm going to buy it because it's a right time and I don't want to let it pass me by. And that's not an agent saying buy. That is an individual personal choice that a lot of people can't make right now. But if you save, continue to work hard, continue to be smart, you're going to be able to do it. You will find a way. And just like, Ken said, we've got to get side hustles going. We have to have multiple streams of income. We can't just have one. You can't just depend. One of the things that the Gen Zs are doing that I think is very phenomenal, they are starting businesses. Right? We're seeing a wave of Gen Zs starting businesses because they're like, I watched what happened to my older brother or sister, and they're stuck in this quagmire of a paycheck, and that ain't good enough. I may have to have that, but I need a side hustle. I need something that can bring me in some more money, that I don't have to be so dependent on the man or woman giving me a raise or coming in and saying my job's eliminated. And we're going to have to get back to that. Got to get back to making our own crops, farming, homesteading. These are things this is what our ancestors did. We've gotten so far away. Let me tell you something. John Rubino, who I podcast with later on today, in an hour. It's recorded. It's not live. It'll be out on Saturday. But one of the things that he says, and same thing with, we talk about power grids and power going out. Can you imagine, man, my cell phone is right beside me, plugged in. I never let it be without power. I've got battery backups, battery chargers, multiples of them. They're always with me. If I go into my briefcase, I probably have 2 or 3 cords. One might break, one might stop working. I never want to be without my phone, my power. And you may be the same way, as is everybody else. Can you imagine when it goes down? You're like lost. Can you imagine being in an airport in a city that you've never been to before? You can't call an Uber. You got to say to somebody else, hey, can I borrow your phone? I'm stuck. You can't even find a pay phone, right? Yeah. Imagine if the electricity went down for a week, 3 weeks, 30 days. You're screwed.
Well, especially in
Everybody's screwed.
California, where they've tried to get rid of your gas appliances and your gas stoves and ovens are the only ones you can have now. Good luck.
So what do we have to do? We got to acknowledge that and go, wait a minute, I may be without my cell phone one day. I may be without my charger one day. What do? We back up. We plan. I'm not saying be an ultra prepper, but there has to be a plan. If you're working a job and you're two people, paying for a mortgage, and if one of you loses your job, you're screwed. You're not thinking right. You're not thinking right. You've got to have a backup. We've got to stop blaming other people too for the decisions that we allow. We have to start taking the bull by the horns, as they say, and prepping and getting ready for what ifs. That savings account. You don't want it all in the bank? Well, where do you want it? You don't want it all in one bank? Where do you want it? But you will get a house. You seem like you're very smart and say what you said. You're making 20, 25% returns on your money. You've managed to save a lot of money. You're going to make a lifestyle decision. And it may be that you move. Like hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people that said, you know what, I'm getting out of here. It's not good for me. I don't have a guaranteed job. I can't afford a house here. I'm going to go take my camp somewhere else. And we're seeing it. We're seeing people that are being called back to Maryland that are saying, yeah, it's too expensive there. I don't need to make that much money. I can make less. Or I can have multiple streams. I can stay right where I am. I don't need to be in the middle of the smog of New York City, breathing methane gas that's being expelled from the parking, from the roadways that they can't even fix. Cutting my life short by 10 or 15 years running on a gerbil wheel. And they move out. They go, you know what? I can decide for me. You can decide for you. Got to do it. You got to.
So where do you think? It sounds like a lot of what you're saying is accountability is going to be really important among individuals, among large groups. So at what point, like with, Department of Government Efficiency and the way that this administration is running finances, at what point do you think this same mentality of accountability comes into play with mom and pop? Because I'm seeing little things start to pop up even in local gov where it's, hey, we're laying off 150 teachers this month.
Yeah, that's happening right now. Hey, look, I'll pull it up while I have you with me. Our friends over at dailyjobcuts.com. Joe, I can make this bigger. Oh, there we go. This is crazy, man. I had this pulled up. I highlighted some things before we went live, and you'll see scattered about here. And this is also in the show notes. Any of you guys can check it out. But look at it. Southwest, 1,750. FAA, hundreds. Boston-based nonprofit, 1,100 due to funding cuts. Look at this. CDC, 1,300. Up to 200,000 federal employees set to be laid off. Waste management, 5,000 positions will be let go by 2026. HUD, 4,800 layoffs. Man, I'm reading this without my glasses. That's pretty good. Look at this. Mass layoffs. Nuclear Security Administration, 325. Global Health, 1,100. Blue Origin, 1,400 layoffs. Whirlpool, didn't disclose it. That's a big company. German sports car maker Porsche, 1,900. Redfin, 450. Chevron, 15 to 20%. Global workforce to up to 8,000 people. JP Morgan Chase, layoffs in February, March, May, June, August, September. Imagine being on the hook there going, am I going to have a job? Am I going to make this round? Next round? What round? Boeing, 400 layoffs. NASA Space Launch Systems. How many people went to college and spent a lot of money on engineering degrees, right? Lloyd's Banking Group, up to 6,000 jobs. Guys, these are now. That was February 9th. GE, 1,000. Meta, 4,000 global layoffs. Massive layoffs reported. 1,800. Unity Technologies. February 7th is all we're back to here. 241, 400, 3,600. This is big. This is big. This is big. This is what we've been talking about. This is big. This is that soft landing.
So I keep a really close eye. I think this brings me on to another topic that's similar in value. But so one of the things I pay really close attention to are the HUD foreclosure market and what's happening with HUD foreclosures. I'm noticing an uptick in those dramatically. Like I can tell you 7 months to a year ago, I was only seeing, I think I'm being generous in saying this, 3 to 4 a week. Now I'm seeing 4 to 6 a day, just in my county alone. Now, mind you, some of those are pre-foreclosures, but a lot of those are bankruptcies. Are you seeing the same thing across all markets, or is this just...
And this is a good opportunity for you, because if you go to HUDhomestore.com, what happens, and you guys can check that link out, and you can drop down in your state, and you can see exactly what you're talking about here. You can get financing, and the unfortunate thing is that a lot of these homes are very distressed.
Yeah.
And so you can get renovation loans, but you can get loans for these if you have any type of ability to work on things, get contract things out. You can actually do a renovation loan where you get 100% of your renovations covered in a mortgage. So they do they give you the original mortgage with the renovations in it. And once it's approved, then, you're basically, you have a renovated house when you move in. They protect these homes when they foreclose on them for 30 days for owner-occupied buyers and nonprofits. I don't recommend lying, though a lot of people probably do and say they're going to live in it and sign all the affidavits. I don't recommend that. That's bad. That can put you in jail. But if you're really going to live in the house, this could be a great opportunity. But foreclosures in general have not happened. And there are people that haven't paid their mortgages in years, 4, 5, 7 years. I podcast with, people all the time that talk about it. One of our, John Hoffman, he's an agent in Chicago, part of our network. He specializes in foreclosures. And, that is part of the market manipulation as well. And it's like job loss. No one wants to lose their job, but not a whole lot of people want to pay for people to not pay their mortgage either. If you did a poll on, is it okay to just everybody pull their money together and pay for the people that can't afford their homes, all of a sudden people are like, well, I can't afford my home. And I want to be bailed out, and I want to be bailed out, and I want to be, you can't, this type of manipulation, market manipulation is just not good. We're seeing it. But good point. HUD is definitely a good place to look, but we are seeing a pickup in foreclosures. Maybe this administration is not going to bail out and allow it to happen. But here's the other trick. I think 70% of the conventional mortgages that are made today are through Fannie and Freddie. And all those non-performing loans and reperforming loans, they're already selling those by the tens of thousands and have been for several years. You just don't hear about it. You just don't see it. So they're already being sold to hedge funds and Wall Street investors that are gobbling up that debt for really nickels and dimes on the dollar of what the asset's worth. So a lot of people that are getting foreclosed on didn't just buy their house in 2020. They bought it 30 years ago. Not 30 years ago, 15 years ago. So anyway.
Well, thanks for having me on, Todd.
My friend, I appreciate you, and God bless you, man. And thanks for coming on and sharing your story. And hang in there and send me an email if you want, ts@saxrealty.com. I want to keep in touch with you, and maybe we can talk more about your situation.
That'd be great. Okay.
All right. Appreciate it. All right. So as we wind up here, guys, I want to get out of here within the next 6 minutes. So I said we'd be an hour and a half to 2 hours. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. You're getting something out of it. We got some more comments we want to pull up. All right. Osama Abdu, thank you so much for your super chat. Solo live streams are your best content. Thank you so much. I know you're a frequent commenter recently too on our channel. I've identified that, and I thank you for that. So, Todd, can you please talk about Zestimate scam and how it likely contributed to the higher and higher prices? Buyers got duped into being confident to put overpriced offers on houses. Did that podcast come out? Yeah, that was with John Wake. I have a really interesting podcast that posted last Saturday where I talked about Zillow and their Zestimate. You could check it out. I highly recommend you watching that. It's a little slower paced video, but we go over some great data. John Wake is a fantastic guest. He was an economist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm pretty sure I got that right. And there it is. But Zestimate, I will say this much when we're talking about Zestimate. Number one, it didn't work for their own Zillow offers because they lost a lot of money, over $1 billion, 1.2 billion. Is that what it was, Joe? Something like that. The lawsuit that they were saying, shareholders, investors were suing Zillow. This was maybe a year or so ago. 1.2 billion in losses from the Zillow offers. They're the creators of this estimate. What was happening is that their algorithm broke. Well, let's just say, we'll keep it at that to be nice. But what was happening is if you were a listing agent and you went to see somebody to sell their house, and this happened to me, and where you comp the house out, you say, well, your house in this neighborhood, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, is worth $450,000, which you could say was a decent amount of money back in 2020, 2021. And you weren't expecting it to be $800,000 or $900,000 a day. But anyway, I remember meeting with a client and saying, that's where I recommend that you put your house, but things are selling hot. You know, maybe you could get 40 or 50,000 more than that in a multiple offer situation. And I remember this client saying, well, why don't we just mark it up 100,000? It's like, all right, 550, sure. I don't think you'll get it. But then they got more. But what we noticed with the Zestimate and Zillow was that the moment that we published the house at the higher price to 550, it seemed like almost overnight when you fired your computer up and looked at Zestimate, it said it was worth 550. It's like, wow, it believed me? Did it believe me that the house was worth 550? Did their Zestimate? What's the difference here? What did that do? Well, that told buyers and sellers that the house was worth 550. Because understand, when a buyer, a frantic buyer, just wants to buy a house, wants to get that great 2.74% mortgage interest rate, they want to compete, they want to buy, they go to Zillow and they look at the Zestimate, and that's the gospel. Why would they offer less? It says it's worth it. Well, then when we found out that they overpaid for the houses that they bought, for whatever reason it is, people started to question whether it could be trusted. Well, we were saying as agents way back in 2000, I think it was 5 or 2006, whenever Zillow launched with their Zestimate, how do they know how much a house is worth? They haven't been inside. So then there was a period of time where legislators, or maybe it was lawmakers in general, were saying these folks need to have their appraiser licenses. And somehow I don't think that that's stuck. They're saying, well, they're appraising properties, they need to have it. So maybe that's when they came out with their disclaimers or the disclosures and decided otherwise. The question is, from this commenter, is do they have a role in where home prices went. Well, I think if you're telling the public and you're increasing values overnight based on listing prices of homes, I think it's hard to say that they don't have any responsibility, right? But maybe their out is that they could say, well, we lost money because of it too. It broke us. We canceled Zillow offers. Maybe that's their out. But anyway, couple more. Let's take a couple more. The beginning of the overdue real estate collapse, exiled in Babylon. I think we're seeing it. I think we're seeing it play out, guys. I can't thank you so much for joining me today. It was fun. It was fun to come back on, be live, take callers. So many comments to go through after the show and look at your comments. I see so many people that have been such longtime supporters of our channel. One of the best things you can do, guys, one of the biggest compliments that you can make is to share our channel, which, thank the Lord, we're over 200,000 subscribers, not because of me. It's because of you. It's because you're a community that sticks together, and that whether you agree with what I say or don't agree, and they're all scattered through the comments of people, naysayers, whether you're an agent that disagrees with me. Look, I love all you guys. I thank you for being on the channel. I thank you for your comments. I thank you for sharing. I thank you for hitting a like button, the thumbs up button. I thank you for subscribing to our channel. And I'm looking forward to the year ahead, continually bringing you these updates. And hey, there we go. Please smash the like button. Thank you guys so much. All right. Till next time. We'll see you soon.